Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As we've been reporting, Carl Palladino created another firestorm yesterday during a speech to a group of Hasidic rabbis with remarks he made about the gay community. So once again, Palladino finds himself on the defensive and in damage control mode. Here now to discuss Palladino's latest efforts at damage control and much more are the four members of our Consultants Corner, Republicans Susan Del Percio and Jonathan Greenspun, and Democrats Doug Forand and Scott Levinson. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
So you all heard the remarks that Carl Palladino made yesterday, saying he doesn't want children to be brainwashed about homosexuality. He then went on a number of national shows this morning to try to backtrack, saying he was really only referring to gay marriage and nothing more. Susan, does all this backtracking, is what he's saying, make any sense?
No, because these were prepared remarks he had. Whether he edited them or not, the tone was there. What's amazing is that he chose to do this right after a very serious bias attack, which was all over the news. So
The one in the
Bronx. And the fact that he chose that to do that next and in front of that audience was just completely inappropriate, frankly, and his words were harsh. But he chose to do it. So it's interesting that we all are saying, oh, he's backpedaling. This is an issue he chose to bring front and center.
And that's what's interesting. I mean, these are prepared remarks. So, I mean, he clearly intended to say them. So I don't get, like, how can we say that, you know, these are just some crazy remarks that he said off the cuff? They were clearly planned, right?
We can't, Michael. And what's amazing to me is, you know, everybody said something about this, but if we ever needed evidence that gay rights was the civil rights issue of our generation, this is it. In 1 week, as Susan points out, where we had a terrible, terrible bias attack, we also have this kind of divisive rhetoric, which really leads to the alienation and the ostracizing of human beings. It's beyond disgusting, beyond the pale. And it really, it begs, I'm sorry, Doug, it begs on the Republican Party, the other folks that are running for state office this year to repudiate this candidacy.
I agree with Scott. I mean, the timing couldn't have been worse, as Susan said. I mean, it was almost as if he was setting out to create this firestorm. He has been roundly criticized, and the fact that at this point he's left standing alone, he's alienating even the fairly extreme base that he's created for himself. I don't know how he builds a meaningful campaign out of this moving forward. He just seems to have this bizarre desire to put his face on the camera, no matter how outrageous he has to be, and no matter what damage it does to himself, his party, his ticket, whatever.
So what is the strategy then to say these prepared remarks and other remarks that he's
by way of background, I think it's known to some, for Mayor Bloomberg, for Governor Pataki, for a number of state and citywide elected officials, I kind of held the Jewish desk as a side job on some campaigns. Let's deconstruct what happened over here. The Palladino campaign made a very, very poor decision in allowing entree and access to an individual who I know every campaign that I handled, I would make sure this guy wouldn't get within 5,000 feet of anyone who I was representing. He's a bad person. He ironically does not even represent large segments of the Jewish community as a constituency,
Jonathan,
but they're very, very
what does that have to
small.
do with what this
I'll
guy
tell you
said?
why. Because he asked about the prepared remarks. The rabbi was the one who prepared the remarks. That's the problem.
And then this is Jonathan. With all
I'm
due
trying
respect.
to.
Let's just hear his explanation.
I'm actually just trying to explain what happened. That's all I'm doing. It's not a smokescreen. You said Republicans should repudiate it. Everyone from Rudy Giuliani to Rick Blasio.
His candidacy, right?
Repudiate his candidacy? No, they repudiated his remarks, which they should have.
Well, finish your explanation.
No, what happened is that, again, it's a mistake to have allowed this guy to have entree to the campaign because he didn't help himself with Jewish voters and he certainly didn't help his campaign.
But my understanding, this isn't the first time that they have met.
No, it's not the first time they've met. This is a problem. I mean, he's had entree to this guy for a while now.
I don't think it's fair to say it's a mistake. It was a conscious decision on his part to bring this guy in and to use him as entree into the Jewish community.
Which was a terrible mistake.
It's beyond. It's an unconscionable act. If you sit out in a way where you are going to embrace bigotry, you have to take responsibility for that. You can't say, oops, I made a mistake.
Again,
that goes beyond that.
I think it has to do with the fact that the campaign is probably not familiar with this guy. I am familiar with the guy. That's why I never allowed him anywhere near the campaigns that I was involved in.
Don't you think they knew what his views were going
They
into
have
this?
to know. This guy ran
So
against
How much
Ed
of a
Koch on the Right
mistake
to
is
Life
it then?
Party.
The words came out of Palladino's mouth. Now, whether they were written and then he edited them, whatever it
And
was.
there's that one line he says
There
that he
is the
took
one.
out. where
Yes,
he
there is one line,
referred
but
to
the sentiment is still
dysfunctional
there.
lifestyle.
You know, and Jonathan brings up a good point. Sometimes you make poor choices in who you allow into a campaign. And as Jonathan also pointed out, there are Republicans throughout national level all the way down have repudiated his remarks. So I think to say that this falls on all Republicans is just flat out wrong. But he has caused a problem for a lot of Republicans.
I'm sorry, he's the title holder of the gubernatorial candidate.
So, what, you
this
think all
year.
Republicans should repudiate his candidacy?
How could you not?
So
this
that's
guy,
like, but you know what, wait, hold
no,
on,
no,
Scott,
this
no,
is
no,
the
Scott,
guy that's
excuse me.
nominated for governor. First of all, I take some umbrage to Jonathan spending 3-4 minutes
But he
on
was
air
selected by
talking
Republicans.
about. And don't you think at this point, when you hear the person who you nominated saying this kind of garbage in the public airwaves, that you got to say, I don't want this guy representing my ticket? Isn't that the job of any thinking Republican?
Well, what do you think is going to happen to moderate Republicans then? Are they going to stay home, vote for Andrew Cuomo? What do you see happening?
Again, it depends on what Palladino is able to do going forward. It seemed last week that he did try and hit a reset button. If he has this angry man thing down, and that's what he goes on, and that's what he's talking about. He's got to stay away from the social issues to pull out any vote, and also, frankly, not to hurt Republicans trying to take back the Senate or pick up some congressional seats. That he needs to get back to an economic message.
And Susan mentions that reset button that he tried to set. In that, though, he kind of stepped on his message by referring to what he said was Andrew Cuomo's legendary prowess.
Right, he didn't
and then also, that was not an off-the-cuff remark as well. That was
prepared over the course of a day. I mean, he didn't reset anything. He just went right back to who he is and what he does, which is he launches these baseless personal attacks. The situation yesterday is particularly extreme, but even before that, the shots at Cuomo, the allegations about Cuomo and his ex-wife, these are just horrible things to say when you have no evidence of it, when you have no reason to say it. And it would be nice if there was a debate going on about the economy, about taxation, about jobs and whatnot. But if you're going to be a buffoon, you're going to stop that debate from happening, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Do you want to weigh in?
No, it's all been said. Again, a mistake to have to say what he had said, mistake to have had the remarks allowed by someone who is not part of the campaign, control the message, to give the remarks out an hour before you get there, and the message itself.
So what does this do, do you think? Dan Donovan today was quick to put out a statement condemning the remarks. What does it do to Dan Donovan, who's running for Attorney General on the Republican line? Harry Wilson, who's running for controller on the Republican line. Do you see that because there isn't this strong candidate?
It's not the issue that came up today or last week or what's happened that they have to support Carl Palladino. It's the fact that Carl Palladino sucks all the air out of the room. So you're not talking about important elective offices like state controller,
When voters
Attorney
go in,
General.
might they just kind of block out all Republicans?
I think it depends where you are in the state. I mean, there are some people you're seeing when you look at the basic polling numbers with motivated voters. Those you have the Republicans and you have independents who are far more motivated to go to the polls, which are leaning Republican.
All right, let's go around the table and get your grades. We had you grade his damage control. Susan, I'll begin with you.
I gave him an F because it wasn't as if he even tried to control it, and then he just went out and continued to spin it out of control.
Doug.
If I could have given him an F-, I would have. I mean, I agree with Susan. I mean, he perpetuated the damage over and over and over again. So if his goal to control damage meant creating more for himself, then I guess he did a good job. But in terms of his campaign, he did as horrible a job as he could have done.
Jonathan.
Generous C, only because he tried to go on and explain it today, but that didn't work very well either.
Scott.
Generous. F, and there was just no effort at damage control at all.
What do you expect next week at the debate?
Mayhem.
Yeah, mayhem.
Absolute mayhem.
Yeah,
Absolute mayhem.
with all these with all these minority parties there, it's sure to get out of control. You've got Charles Barron, you've got a bunch of other interesting folks there who are sure to use the 15 minutes that they have to their full advantage.
So are voters even going to get kind of
It's on cable.
It's on cable, but when people read about it, are they going to be able to decipher really what happened, what the main issues are, where these people stand?
Who decides they want to make the most news and be the most outrageous, especially when you're dealing with third-party candidates after, I'd say, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Conservative. After that, you just don't know what you're going to get.
What does Andrew Cuomo need to do?
Andrew Cuomo needs to continue doing what he's been doing, which is acting responsible, making reasonable statements, talking about the future direction that the state has to go in.
Avoiding New York law.
All he has to do right now is show up at the debate and show up on Election Day.
That's it. You
That's
think
it.
that Carl Palladino has, with all of these remarks, has just given him a huge gift?
I think he was winning regardless, but yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with Scott. I mean, the campaign for governor is over. Carl Palladino may be the last person to know that, but it is. I mean,
would you say it's over?
It's probably over, but I don't think he loses by the margins that the polls are saying. I think it's probably closer, but I think it's pretty much over.
And while it could be over, you don't make the mistake of pretending there's not a race going on if you're the Democratic nominee.
Then you say over, and you think it's going to be a smaller loss for Carl Palladino?
It comes down to who gets turned on, who gets turned off, and who turns out. And those three are all related. All right, we know who's turned on. All right, the upstate vote, they're turned on for Palladino. We know certainly after today who's turned off. Who turns out is really the question.
Well, and I think the model that you're going to see is a regular gubernatorial turnout for Democrats and a probably skewed slightly higher for independents and Republicans.
All right, Susan, you get the final word. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's time for a break. I'll be back with a preview of tomorrow night's program. Stay with us.